fresh one. And we've all prepared sort of a little bit of a range of images to give you guys a taster. It's sort of a little bit up on the radar. For the first time ever, they are now offering flights from next week, actually, direct from Hobart, which is, as far as I know, has actually never happened. So, and they're actually, the government's absolutely subsidising it till probably early summer. So when Tassie opens up, and for those Tassie people that are down here now, it's really looking like the best overseas trip you can possibly do at the moment. And it's very underdeveloped. You know, it's not set up for tourism, really. It is to some extent, but it's not the kind of place that, you know, bus loads of people. I've got a joke where if there's somebody on the beach where you arrive, then you just drive off to another beach because it's unusual to see anybody. And seeing as almost 2/3 of the island is beaches, that's saying something. It's wild and woolly and windy and stunning and beautiful and raw and powerful and bold, and I'm totally in love.
Yeah, it is a wonderful place, Paulie. You've actually been over there for a longer period of time than I have. I've only had one trip there, and that was 4 days, I think. So having 7 days, you've done better than me already. But I absolutely fell in love with the place. I went over there in March last year. Luke took me over. I was lucky enough to go over with him on one of his trips. And Luke's been over there how many times, Luke? 7 or 8 times, maybe?
Yeah, probably about, I think it's about 6 times now, something like that, in about 3 years. So yeah, been busy getting over there. Once it's in your blood, I think it's hard to leave. So
yeah, I guess the thing.
Just I'm having a problem with the YouTube feed, so I might get you guys to just.
Yeah, no worries. I guess the thing about Flinders, and Paul just sort of mentioned it then, is it is logistically, or has been logistically, a bit of a difficult place to visit. Traditionally the flights have been from Launceston or Bridport. 2 different companies fly out of Launceston and Bridport. You can also fly direct from Melbourne. So the novelty of having flights from Hobart, I think, is going to open it up a fair bit for Tasmanians in particular, certainly at the moment, to maybe experience it. It's not a cheap place to get to, and I think the way to treat Flinders Island, if you're a Tasmanian or anywhere in Australia, really, is to treat it like a proper holiday where you spend a week or a couple of weeks, and you spend the money on accommodation or whatever. There are cheaper options. You can go over on a ferry, take your own car. I say cheaper. I don't think it's cheaper than flying to take your car, but once you're there, you don't have to hire a car, which is another thing that you pretty much have to do over there. You need some form of transport. There's no real public transport unless you happen to get an accommodation provider or a tour operator that will drive you around. But yeah, you do need a vehicle, and you probably need a vehicle that's suited to gravel roads. You can hire vehicles like that because most of the roads on the island are gravel. And you have to be very careful of the wildlife. As Paulie said, it's a very treacherous place for the wildlife and for the cars that you're driving at night. And if you are going places for sunset or for sunrise or to do some astrophotography, your number one priority is to drive at extremely slow speeds and to allow a lot of time to get from one place to another, so you're not contributing to the road toll of the wildlife over there. There are wombats everywhere. There are wallabies everywhere. It's just insane, the amount that are there. I've never seen so much wildlife concentrated near the roads. So you do have to be really conscious and careful of that over there. But there's so much to see. I mean, I was there for 4 days, and it was not even slightly enough to see all the things that you could see over there. It's just amazing. The entire east coast is beach. It's one long beach from the tip of the island to the around the southern tip of the island. It's completely beach, which gives you some indication. And the west side is just beach after rock cove, after beach, after rock cove, after tall mountains, towering granite. Just amazing. I think I've probably convinced everyone to go now. Don't you think, Paul?
No,
how are we going? we're in business.
Yeah, all good. I've got YouTube's changed the live studio thing, and I thought I'd updated the link correctly, but obviously I hadn't. So when I set the feed to go live, it didn't send it straight to YouTube like normal. So that was good fun, but it's all running properly now. It's certainly a magical place, and I think Nick sort of alluded to a few things that might be worth bringing up a map and just getting an idea of where it is and how the place is laid out, and we can go from there. So I might just share my screen and bring up a Google map that I've got here, and that should help describe a little bit about what's going on from there. So hopefully you can all see the map here. We've got Victoria here and Tassie here. So Flinders Island is sitting, it's closer to Tassie than Vic, but getting out into the Bass Strait here. You can see the main areas or main ways you get there is either flying from Essendon Airport with Sharp Airlines. You can also fly from Launceston Airport, and you can also fly using Flinders Island Aviation, which leaves from Bridport over here. And basically, there's 2 airfields. There's one at Whitemark, and then there's another one at Lady Barron. Whitemark's more of the commercial airfield, which is used by Sharp, and Lady Barron is used by Flinders Island Aviation, but they can use them interchangeably, of course. But I don't think, I think the planes that land at Whitemark can only land at Whitemark, but the smaller planes have a bit more flexibility anyway.
I'll just reiterate on the specifics of flying, maybe, Lukey, is Sharp Airlines has an 18-seater and they have a 15-kilo limit with 6 kilos carry-on, whereas the Flinders Island Aviation guys who we flew with in out of Bridport, it's a lot more, I guess, flexible, and we ended up taking a lot of gear over, and you can sort of custom hire the plane depending on how many people to be probably close to as effective as getting one of the flights from the others if you've got, say, 4 or 5 people, and you can be a bit more relaxed and maybe save a bit of money bringing food and things over. So you've got a couple of options. The barge, I think, is it only once a week, Nick? I think
it's only once a week, and it leaves on, I believe it's on the high tide, and so that means that if the high tide's at 1 in the morning or 2 in the morning, that's when you're leaving. So it's pretty brutal. I think you have to sit in your car the whole time, and basically, you drive off at the end. But it's certainly a bit more of a mission, and actually reasonably expensive to do. But if you're going to be in Flinders for several weeks, that's definitely the best idea.
I got a message from Jeff Murray saying he went over last summer with a camper van and on the barge, and that ended up working out to be just as cost effective as accommodations.
There you go. Yeah, certainly with a camper van, that's the way to do it, because you've got everything self-contained and all in one. So it's be interesting to hear a bit more from Jeff about his ferry experience. But I'm sure that it's not really a Spirit of Tasmania type scenario. It's a bit more agricultural, you could say, than that. In fact, I think they do have livestock quite commonly on the ferry as well. So. So it's a little bit of a different experience. It's probably a bit easier to fly with Sharp to get over there if that's a thing. And now they've also just announced direct Hobart to Flinders Island flights now as well.
Will that be Sharp as well, Luke?
Yeah, that's with Sharp. So Sharp's
in September.
Yeah, that's right. It's been subsidised by the Tasmanian government for 4 months. So it's the same cost to fly from Launceston to Flinders as it is from Hobart. And I believe the cost will go up after that 4-month period. And they're basically doing that just to assess whether or not that 4-month period is it's going to be a popular enough service to continue it. I think it's three flights a week in and out. I guess I'm hoping that it stays as a regular fixture, because it's certainly a lot easier to fly out of Hobart to there rather than driving all the way up to Launceston to fly. So that's Sharp there, and so they're very small planes. You don't, as Paul said, you don't have much luggage. So with that means that you, in fact, from a camera gear perspective, you can only really fit your valuables under the seat in front of you, and it's a very small area under the seat in front of you. So it's you can't really take too much gear, unfortunately, if you do it that way. But it's a nice exercise in packing light, I think, when you look at it that way. But Yeah, that's the airline. In terms of the geology, we're just talking about this is actually a geological map of showing the granite around the southeast of Australia, and so you can see that we've got this mid-Devonian granite that's actually starts at Coles Bay. In fact, there's a little bit on Maria Island, I think, as well, and that goes all the way up this coastline. Didn't realize there's quite so much granite actually in that area, and then up through Cape Barren Island and the east coast of Flinders Island, and then through to Wilsons Prom. In fact, there's a couple other little islands here as well that have that. This is sort of another representation. So it's not all granite on the island, but the west coast, which is where most of the rocky coves and things are, is primarily all granite there. So it's quite interesting. And we'll go back to the map, and we will. So I guess the first thing to talk about when we're looking at this map here is the where the centers are, well, commercial centers, because that's basically where you're going to do all your shopping and things like that. And you've got White Mark here, and you've also got Lady Barron, and they're the two sort of main towns on the island. There is also a few little settlements up at Killiecrankie and Palana up here, and Emitter as well. But the biggest settlements are White Mark and Lady Barron. And in White Mark, there's a little bit of this quite close to the airport, and there's quite a few cafes. There's a great restaurant called the Flinders Wharf that's just opened up. There's the IGA there, and a few other cafes and souvenir shops and things like that. So it's got pretty much everything you need. But if you forget your camera charger or batteries or something like that, there's no chance you'll get anything like that over there unless there's another photographer you bump into. So you don't want to forget anything like that, because that could ruin your trip pretty easily. If I go to the satellite view.
There's a 24-hour fuel station in White Mark now too, which sounds normal, but for a long time it wasn't. And if you were caught out on a I think a Saturday or a Sunday, sometimes there was no fuel available at all, or you had to drive to the other end of the island to get it. So now that fixed that 24 one, it gave us a lot of flexibility for our late trips and early rises. And
it really does speak to the level of development on the island. In fact, it was only a year or two ago that they actually got proper mobile reception across the whole island. And before that, on my first couple of visits, you really only get reception in White Mark and Lady Barron around the commercial areas, and you were pretty much off the grid as soon as you left, which was kind of nice, but realistically, keeping in contact and logistics, and if you break down or anything like that, it's not ideal. So now the reception is really good along the island, but you need to be with Telstra. I don't think there's any Optus reception at all. In fact, Paulie had to get a Telstra SIM card just to be connected over there. So that's also worth noting as well. And you can see, I think, as Nick mentioned, the whole east coast is primarily beach, and so essentially, from a photographic perspective at least, there's not as much going on over there. And so, in fact, I think on our last trip we didn't really even visit the east coast at all. It's just a long, giant beach. There's some areas of interest in this sort of part, but primarily, and you can see from that granite map as well, all of the granite and the interesting rock is really all along this coastline, and that's set up pretty well because that's also where the main settlements are as well. So that's really good. And so I think that sort of sums up, I guess, the layout and where everything is in terms of that.
The main sort of asphalt road is in the west side, sort of between Lady Barron, White Mark, and maybe 20 minutes north.
Yeah,
and
you
then
can sort of see this one here. That's all sealed, and then it, once you get about here, it's no longer sealed anymore, and then that's all dirt from here. And likewise, this is all dirt down to this location down here, which is one of the famous locations on the island called Trousers Point. And then I think there's a little bit of bitumen up through here as well, but yeah, there's not a lot. So that's another thing to note if you're not familiar with gravel driving. But that's I guess as they go, they'll probably seal more and more, but it's certainly, not
Part of the deal.
yeah, it's a sort of part of the charm of it, I suppose, and the feeling of it being more rural and remote. There's also worth noting that there's a lot of other islands around Flinders Island, and so it looks quite almost chaotic here when you look at it as a group. And you've got Cape Barren Island, which has got quite a lot of Aboriginal heritage. There's Clark Island and some of these other islands through here. I believe the Sydney Cove wreck was down through here, which was quite a fascinating story if anyone's read about the Sydney Cove. And so, yeah, and you can also see just from a top-down perspective, there's some really beautiful sort of sand forms in the waterways here, which really do bode well for aerial photography as well. And if you do fly from Bridport, you basically, and landing in Lady Barron, you actually do fly right over some of that area as well. So that's if you're with Flinders Island Aviation, and we actually did that on the last trip and was able to actually see a lot of these sort of features as we flew over to land at Lady Barron, which was quite nice. So I'm sure Paul will agree that at least from a Tasmanian perspective, you don't see too many of those sort of features from an aerial perspective.
Yeah, it's something I'm looking forward to exploring more from the air, and I got a beautiful taste there, and I will show you a few photos of what we're talking about shortly. And interestingly, Cape Barren is actually completely managed and run by the Tasmanian Aboriginal community, so it's not actually like a public sort of island, so to speak. I think the occasional fishermen and travellers and sea kayakers might drop in sort of here and there, and it's reasonably welcome, I think, if you're polite and you ask. But it is very, very steeped in Aboriginal tradition and not from historically and all the way through to modern time.
And in terms of the layout of Cape Barren, you've got the sort of settlement in this corner here. It's not I think I can't remember the number, but I think it was not even a couple hundred, I think, on Cape Barren, and
northwest corner.
And then basically the rest of it is just open area essentially. So it's quite fascinating. These hills here too, although they're not just hills, they're quite tall mountains here. I think this one's 700 or 600 meters, and that one up here, Mount Strzelecki's 700, I believe. So in that sort of ballpark. So they're actually quite tall mountains right by the coast as well, which is always a very stunning sort of scene that you can get. That's probably worth talking about. In terms of Flinders Island, we've got Mount Strzelecki, which doesn't actually look that imposing from a top-down perspective, but I can assure you when you're down on ground level, it's quite a massive sort of complex of different peaks and things like that. So definitely a great area to explore. You can also climb up the mountain. There's a walking track that takes you up just off of this road here down towards Trousers Point.
How long is the hike, Loki?
I haven't done it. I think it's. I couldn't tell you actually. I'd imagine it would be good. You'd probably want to allow a day to get up there and back.
6 or 7 hours return.
Yeah, I don't think you'd be, running up there too well. It's reasonably tall mountain, and you're at sea level here, and I think whatever the height is, I can't quite recall, but it's a good 700-meter climb probably, so it's enough to get the heart starting, that's for sure. And there's also another couple of the mountainous areas. There's the Darling Range, which is there's a really great drive that you can do through there. It's quite rough, so you probably want a four-wheel drive or a vehicle with some clearance. It's more of a fire trail than anything, but it goes through here, and it's quite a stunning area of mountains and craggy granite peaks. And then the other main area is up here at Mount Killiecrankie, which is also a really beautiful mountain, and you can climb that mountain too. There is Mount Tanner. It's a little bit smaller, probably not as photogenic, that area, but certainly around Killiecrankie is a very, very beautiful space as well. Killiecrankie is also quite famous for crayfishing. And there's actually, I think the last guy with the license to get crayfish is actually based at Killiecrankie there. And there's always a fishing boat or a boat based in the bay there as well.
And
So
diamonds too, Lucky?
yeah, there's the Killicranky diamonds as well. That's a that's kind of a what's it, a topaz, I think, that you can find. There's Diamond Gully here, which is where a lot of them used to be found, but I think that everyone's sort of dug them up, and there was another little area on the road in that basically you can see the pin there. And so I believe that's probably the current sort of hot spot in terms of looking for those. That's just another little thing you can do while you're over there. I think, in fact, Nick and I actually got a sieve and gave it a go. And I think all you found was a peacock spider, if I remember correctly, Nick, and that's about it.
Beautiful peacock spider,
yeah.
and unfortunately a spade met a buried frog.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
A very
Yeah,
large buried frog dug into
yeah.
this spot and managed to.
I was trying to work out what I was looking at, and it was half a frog. So yeah, that wasn't good.
I think that pretty much killed it for me.
Yeah.
I was very upset about that. It was a huge frog.
Yeah.
And I've never seen a frog like that in Tasmania, and obviously we're over in Flinders, and it was buried in the soil.
Yeah.
So he must have had a hole there that he was down or something, and we disturbed him. I wasn't very happy about that.
No, I can understand that. So yeah, so if you do go looking for topaz, just be careful of the frogs. But yeah, I believe there's probably the purple swamp hen or somewhere like that in White Mark. You can actually hire out the sieves and give it a go. So that's always fun.
You want to point out the docks, Luke?
What was that? Sorry, Paul?
You want to point out where the docks are?
Yeah, and there's also another, probably my favourite area of the island is an area called the Docks, which is not signposted at all. And that's following down this road here. And then there's sort of like a little campground down here as well, and some beautiful beaches. And so from the air, it's not looking particularly amazing, but when you've got this beautiful peak looking back onto where you're looking back onto it, it makes for a pretty spectacular photograph, and also a really stunning aerial photography location as well. And so that's sort of an area that's a bit I think if you speak to any of the locals, they'll tell you about it, but it's certainly not signposted. And then probably the main reason is this road here is pretty much two-wheel drive to around this sort of point, and that's where the climb starts up Mount Killicranky. But then from that point onwards, it turns into a four-wheel drive only, and so that sort of keeps people looking at just. You might have to walk down all that way if you don't have a vehicle with good clearance, essentially. So that's
too far a walk. It's pretty reasonable.
And it's the only other thing to consider, because the island doesn't have a whole lot of vehicles with good clearance available for car hire. So just have to be aware of that. And so it's sort of like, depending on what's happened with the rain and everything lately, you don't really know what the road condition is. So maybe ask a local as well about that kind of thing. But definitely worth some time in there for sure.
Palanga, a little bit further north, is a good spot.
Palana.
Palana.
We've got Palana in here. That's some beautiful rocks around this coastline here. These dunes didn't turn out to be that great of a subject in the end after going in there and giving it a look. And then we've got Northeast River, which has got probably one of the most stunning tidal inlets in Tasmania.
Easily.
Very, very beautiful location, and also really good for aerial photography as well. You also got a beautiful view out to these sister islands here as well. Egg Beach is another feature that's quite. It's not too bad to get to. If you've got a four-wheel drive, you can actually drive out there. A bit of a scrappy road, but it's certainly doable. The reason it's called that is you've got a beach here where there's just basically coated. You can't really see it on Google, but it's just covered in egg-like boulders, essentially, beautiful rounded boulders. And so that's a really interesting photography subject. And like most of the coastline, it's got some very, very interesting granite boulders and tors. And you tend to find, even though it's all granite, each beach or each cove seems to do it in a little bit of a different way. So it's not just like every cove's the same. They might be more rounded. They might be have a lot of different lichen on them. There's always something that seems to be different about each beach, which makes you want to keep going back to all of these other different places. Castle Rock's another famous location on the island, and that is right here. There's a turn off here, and basically a car park where you can walk out to the rock. So that's also another great spot, as well as Wyballina Chapel, which I think Nick might talk a little bit about the Aboriginal history of the island. And Wyballina Chapel and that area is quite central to all of that. Yeah, it's sort of in this cleared area here. And then there's also a great little bay here with an old jetty called Lily's Beach, and Sawyer's Bay, which is where we normally stay, Sawyer's Bay Shacks, which is a great accommodation. And
Sure is.
the other, what was that?
I said, sure the heck is.
Yeah. And then probably the other major spot is Trousers Point and Fotheringay Bay, which are two very awesome photography compositions there as well, and plenty of other things to keep any photographer happy, really. I mean, you can go back there 10 times and find something different each time. There's no doubt about that. So Fotheringay's probably a bit harder of a place to find a composition, but Trousers Point's got it makes up for that pretty well. So, and
that being said, we had two of our best shoots at Fotheringay because of the light and the conditions.
Yeah, so we did read that pretty well. And there's also another beach over here, which was a bit of a surprise, called Yellow Beach, and there's some really beautiful granite around this end of the beach here too. So more than enough. And you know, a lot of this area I haven't even visited in all the time I've been there. So there's more than enough to explore and check out some new areas that you know, maybe aren't on the, you know, the photographic hotspot trail, which are, you know, it's not something that we're trying to set up, by the way. It's just you know, it's definitely one of those sort of places where you can definitely make your own photographs very easily. And I guess speaking on that, maybe we should look at some of our own photographs, and I don't know, would you like to lead us in on that, Nick?
Oh, sure, no worries.
Yep.
Well, yeah, I've only been once, and it was only for 4 days, so I've got a bit of a limit with what I've taken, and no doubt you'll see.
I'll stop sharing.
You'll see similar photos from Luke and Paul from their times over there, or similar places, not necessarily similar photos, but I'll share my screen. Oops, no, what am I doing?
One thing too that we haven't really.
You'll have to give me the shared.
Oh, I haven't set you guys up as
co-hosts.
Co-hosts. Oh man, I'm losing my form, I think, at the moment. Too much of a break, I think.
Oh.
All right, how are you going with that now, Nick?
Yeah, I'm just clicking on one now. There we go. You got that up?
Yep.
Yep, cool.
Looks like Trousers Point.
Yeah. Yep. So yeah, this is Trousers Point, which Luke obviously talked about before, and it's got these beautiful rocks like this one down there on the foreshore, and there's lots and lots of compositions. You've got the in the background here, you've got the national park, Strzelecki National Park. This isn't Mount Strzelecki straight ahead. It's actually the taller mountain is off to the top left there.
I think it technically it was part of that complex. I don't know if it's got its own name. Yeah, it's confusing because there's so many like sub peaks. You don't really know what you're looking at there.
Yeah, it's look, it's quite amazing. But yeah, the actual walk to the summit of Mount Strzelecki is further to the north, which I haven't done. Obviously, I've only been there once, and we didn't have time for the walk. But I'll be excited to go back because there's a quite a nice cloud forest on Mount Strzelecki, I believe. So what a cloud forest is, if you're not aware of it, is it's basically on a coastal mountain range or a coastal cliff area. The moisture from the altitude there tends to create its own microclimate, so it's much wetter on the part of the mountain that the moisture hits, so the western side of Mount Strzelecki, and there's quite a beautiful, I've seen some pictures of it, and it looks magnificent. Just beautiful plants that you wouldn't necessarily associate with being a coastal habitat. And there's actually a similar couple of them on the Three Capes walk
Mount
down
Fortescue.
the Tasman Peninsula,
Yeah.
which you can walk through these places, and they're almost like mini rainforests, I suppose, and just with low stunted plants often, but they're quite spectacular. And I'd be really keen to go up Mount Strzelecki and have a poke around there, particularly if it was a bit misty. And I think that's one of the things with Mount Strzelecki, like it tends to be shrouded in mist fairly often as well.
Yeah, you certainly want to pick your day when you went up and climbed to the summit, and like the forest that you're talking about, you almost do want to have a bit of cloud up the top there just to give you that moody sort of look. I'd imagine during a very clear sort of day, it would be almost not kind of good weather for shooting a forest. So you'd have to really pick your day well, I think, for something like that. I wasn't even aware of that cloud forest. So
yeah, I read about it when I came back. Actually, there was a scientific paper that's been released on it, and I read quite a bit about it because for some reason I googled Strzelecki National Park or whatever just after, and came across this paper, and it was fascinating. And saw a few pictures. And
it's always after you go to places, isn't it?
Yeah. But look, I'll go back to Flinders, no doubt, and I'm really keen to do some more walks when I get over there, particularly up in Strzelecki National Park, and also Mount Killiecrankie, which we talked about before, which is it's 300 odd meters tall, so it's a bit of a hike as well. And anyone that's hiked on bare granite would know that it can get a bit slippery if it's wet, that sort of thing, like the hazards at Freycinet. But I'd love to get up there for a sunset or a sunrise. It would be fantastic for either. There's some beautiful looking sculpted rocks up there, and I'd love to have a play up there.
Yeah, there's definitely, I've done that walk actually, Nick, and there's some really interesting stuff up there. There's also Pillinger's Peak as well, which is another beautiful peak in the Darling Range, which has a walk up to the summit as well. So that's another one to check out as well.
Was that pointy one?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a specky looking.
Very photogenic mountain.
Yeah, absolutely. Just showing a picture here. This is taken at Trousers Point, but it's looking out to the west to one of the islands. This is actually Mount Chapel Island that you can see between the boulders here. And that island is famous in its own right. It's only a fairly small island, but it's got its own species of tiger snake. And it's one, so you've got the normal mainland and Tasmanian tiger snake, which is the same species, which is, I think, the fourth most venomous snake in the world. And then you've got the Mount Chapel subspecies of tiger snake, and they only live on Mount Chapel Island, and they aren't quite as venomous, but they're still number 6 or 8 in the world for venom. And it's covered, the island is covered in these tiger snakes, and they are bigger than normal tiger snakes. So they sort of grow, normal Tasmanian tiger snakes are sort of 1.2 to 1.6 metres fully grown, whereas the Mount Chapel Islands tiger snakes can grow up to 2 metres. And I'd love to get over there just to have a poke around, but not too much of a poke around. But I just sort of throw that in there because it's such an interesting story that this small island is home to a very dense population of one of the most venomous snakes on earth. I'll move on to the next.
And the locals will tell you all about that too. If they point out Chapel Island, I don't know how many people have been over there, but it sounds pretty formidable.
Yeah. I think it's great. It's a very it's a well farmed island. I think it's pretty.
It's got an airstrip too.
Yeah. It's we'll point it out on Google Maps a bit later, but a lot of the outer islands in the Furneaux group, or a lot of the islands just off the west coast there in the north, they've all been settled by white people and people with Aboriginal heritage, of course, and there are lots of landing strips and grazing that happens and still happens on these islands. So they're quite well utilised. They're not that pristine sort of landscape on the islands, I believe. Yeah, if you can get onto a boat over there, I'm sure you can go for a look. There's so many islands to look at. This photo here, there's two islands in this photo. You've got Mount Chapel Island again in the background, and then there's actually a flat island here, which I think is called Big Green Island or something like that. Yeah, yep. So this was taken from near Whitemark, and it's Big Green Island in the foreground. And this was just a lightning storm that happened on our first night, and managed to snap that photo.
Wow.
Oh,
Should be pretty rare, really. I guess they probably get more storms up that way, but it's not. Lightning's not something that's super common in Tassie.
Yeah, if you watch the lightning trackers and stuff, you do actually see quite a few of the Melbourne storms. The Victorian storm fronts will actually track down and come over Flinders Island as they sort of move off to the east. It's probably another thing worth mentioning that the weather on Flinders, it's generally a bit warmer than the Tasmanian mainland, I think,
yep.
fractionally.
They say that it's warmer than the mainland Tassie, and they say the weather's often nicer than Melbourne as well.
Yeah. But the thing that you'll get on any of the islands, Bass Strait, is the wind.
The wind.
It was windy constantly the 4 days I was there, and it's a common feature. So you need to be aware that you have wind to deal with a lot of the time. Thankfully, a lot of the subjects that you shoot over there are granite rocks, and so they don't move in the wind, so you can play around with your compositions a bit without worrying about things moving. But
the other thing that probably is worth noting, and you don't have to worry about this, Nick, is a really big, sturdy, solid tripod. If you've got a more lightweight tripod that doesn't handle the wind so well, it's not going to be your outcome's not going to be quite as nice.
Yeah, and that plays into your luggage limits on the airline over as well. So you've got a lot of things to think about logistically with your camera gear. Including you definitely want a sturdier tripod, I would have thought. This is a sort of, you could shoot this composition pretty much anywhere on Flinders, or similar composition, just some rocks with a long exposure with a nice granite. And I just happened to do that one morning. It's nothing particularly special. If I'd been there a while longer, I could have picked out any rock off the coast and tried a similar exposure. But just shows you some of the things that you can do. It's Wyberlina Chapel. I'll come back to that. We'll talk about Wyberlina a bit later. This is Egg Beach. Luke was telling you about the egg-shaped rocks, and I guess this sort of sums up the type of rocks that you have in the area. It's just a beautiful little spot, and I love this one, how it's sort of carved its own little hole, and sort of like a grinding stone almost. It's sort of weathered away this particular spot, and I reckon it's been there for a very, very long time, that rock. And here's another shot of Egg Beach. Again, you can see the type of weathering that you have there. It really is beautiful and worth a drive. This was near Egg Beach as well.
I shot the same rock.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. The thing about this rock, obviously, is the shape with the bush of the heart, and I think it sort of symbolises a broken heart and having a, almost like a dead piece of stone. It's got all sorts of symbolism which you could attach to it. This is near Egg Beach as well. Just, you can see the seepage on the cliffs there. You see it all over the island. You get these sort of rusty, almost rusty, wet patches or soaks that come down, and they stain the rocks in particular ways depending on the contours, and they're just all over the island. the opportunities for creating compositions of pattern and colour are just endless. It's fantastic. So this is Castle Rock. This isn't a very traditional view of it, I don't think, Luke. But that's a huge rock. The one in the background, and the one in the foreground is only a small one, and that was interesting. I thought I'm going to try and capture something that may not have been done before, and I ended up having to shoot that. This foreground rock's about maybe 8 to 10 foot off the ground, and so I actually shot it with my tripod sort of held over my head and trying to frame it, and then shooting it with the remote cord hanging down. And it took a lot of goes to get something that was reasonable, and it was also blowing a gale, so it was quite a difficult shot to get, but it was just a bit of a different composition to what I'd seen. Try and click on that.
Yeah, it was beautiful light that evening, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, oh, it was amazing. It was just beautiful. But yeah, blowing a gale. At one stage my filters were covered in sea salt, and I hadn't realised, and so I've got a bit of a dreamy glow to some of my photos because of the sea salt putting a bit of a haze over it. But this is a more traditional sort of view of the rock. Rock climbers actually climb this rock. It's that big. It really is an amazing sort of spot. And it's on the west coast, so it's sort of positioned for sunset mainly. Obviously, it's a wider shot of it. And the light just, kept on changing. It was beautiful. Trouble. This is at Castle Rock as well. Just, I like this natural sort of staircase that was leading up towards the clouds there. This is up at northeast river, isn't it?
Yep, northeast river.
Yeah, so there's some lovely rocks near the mouth of the river. We didn't get the best light that morning, although this was not too bad. But that'd be a great spot for a sunrise. But the only problem with it is it's a long drive, and you have to drive for the wildlife. So if you're going to do sunrise in the middle of summer at Northeast River, you'll probably need to leave at 3 o'clock in the morning to get there from White Mark or somewhere else on the island, driving at 20 kilometres an hour. So bear that in mind.
Yeah, it's probably about 45, 50 minutes from White Mark.
Yeah, it would be. They're travelling at normal speed. Yeah. So it's you need to be really conscious of the animals. If you're going anywhere for sunrise or coming back from sunset, you need to allow that travel time so you don't ruin your hire car or ruin the animals, which would be very likely either scenario if you're driving silly. This is just a bit of a record shot looking out towards Inner Sister Island. So this is again at Northeast River on the northern side of the outlet. So, but I love the colour, the green lichen and greeny yellow lichen, which was a bit unusual. I hadn't seen any before I'd got to that spot, so I thought I'd take a photo of it. What else we got to show? This is one of my favourite shots from the trip. It's taken down near the docks that we talked about before. The docks really is, in a landscape or in an island that is completely and utterly spectacular, the docks probably is the crowning glory of the entire place from a photography point of view. And these cliffs in the background are huge. They're absolutely massive. And they just give you endless options with a wide angle, with a telephoto lens, with good light, with stormy light. You're going to have to deal with the wind there, like everywhere else, but I would be, if I was a landscape photographer and I was going there primarily to take photos and I was there for a week, I'd probably spend 2 or 3 days just at the docks alone. I reckon it really is underexplored and absolutely spectacular. And I think a lot of rock climbing gets done by those in the know in the area as well. But it is just, it's undescribable, really. There's just some of the waves crashing off the docks. Lots of rocks like this off the end there. The light was getting good at the docks, and I shot this tree, and Luke looked at me funny and said, "What are you doing? There's all sorts of things to shoot, and you're shooting that tree." Well, I liked the tree, and I think it turned out all right, but he was right. I was wasting good light shooting something that wasn't quite as spectacular.
Forgive me for being so judgmental.
I think it's beautiful. And I really love the trilogy of colours in particular, and these beautiful sort of alluring shapes that they give and the light.
Yeah. Look, it's yeah. I mean, I really like the shot, but considering I only had one night and one lot of good light at the docks so far in my life, I probably should have taken Luke's advice and shot something else. But I did run around like a chook with my head chopped off very soon after that, trying to get some compositions.
Know the feeling.
Yeah, it faded pretty quick. This is.
Oh, you found it too? Yeah, cool.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I found that by accident in the dark, like way out on my own. Going, what the?
Yeah. No, this is amazing sawtooth rock near the docks. It's not at the docks. You have to go for a bit of a walk, but it's worth mentioning that there is a walk from the docks that goes all the way around that point down to Killicranky Bay. And if you're going, if there's any particular walk that you think you might, if you're going to do some walks there, that would be really high up on the list of walks to do, because it goes through all this coastal area, and so you'll see all these spots for yourself. It's amazing. It really is. And this is after the light went, unfortunately, so it's a little bit duller, but it's the same area. Just incredible shapes, balancing, this huge balancing rock. It was just amazing. And that's the same rock from a different angle. Obviously the light wasn't looking too great by then. But, this is the docks. Bay of Fires on steroids. There's no doubt about it. This was taken in near darkness, just a long exposure without any filters. So it was on the way back to our car for the night, and turned out to be one of my favourite shots of the trip. But if you just look further into the distance, all those rocks, they just keep going and going and going. I mean, you could walk along the coast for hours and just find more and more of these scenes. It's really incredible. And finish up. This was taken on our last morning before we caught the plane back. And this is just one of the other mountain ranges. I think this was the back of the northern part of Strzelecki from the road between Lady Barron and Whitemark, Luke.
Yep.
Correctly.
Yeah, there's a lot of really beautiful sort of were they tea trees or melaleucas through there?
Yeah, tea trees. I think they're tea trees. Tea trees are a real feature over there. So keep an eye out for those. They sort of pop up here and there, and they've got these beautiful shapes. And you've got the luxury of the backgrounds that are quite spectacular. Obviously, the light wasn't great on that last morning, but I thought I'd stop and take a shot anyway. And yeah, you can see the possibilities of if you had that at sunrise, where the mountains were lit up in beautiful glowing golden light, and the trees as well. You could. If you're there for 4 days, you just won't know where to go. You'll be in a tiz just trying to work out what's the best spot to go for sunrise or sunset, because it's just pretty much everywhere. But anyway, that's my collection. And I'll stop sharing my screen, or will I? Oh no, I'll talk. Oh no.
Want to talk about Wyballina, Nick, or do you want to leave that?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, we'll talk about Wyballina. Actually, I'll just go back to. I'll just find that. Yeah, so this is the chapel at Wyballina, which is a quite an old building, and there's a couple of buildings at Wyballina. There's a chapel and a homestead there. Wyballina, and the reason I want to talk about it is it's an extremely important area in the more modern history of the Tasmanian Aboriginal people. A very sad place, and a place where the full-blooded Aboriginal tradition nearly ended after 40,000 years of occupation in Tasmania, their own land here, La Trawitta. And basically what happened is Tasmania got settled by white people, and there were a number of conflicts, and it was decided by the governor at the time, Governor Arthur, and some other senior people, including a bloke called George Augustus Robinson, that they would round up Tasmanian Aboriginal people from their homes on mainland Tasmania and would resettle them somewhere, and they on the islands, and they decided to settle them here at Wyballina, which Luke showed you on the map, but it's near Emita on the west coast. And so there were about 200 Aboriginal people, I believe, taken there against their will, and were put in a camp that was here. Obviously, there's only a couple of buildings remaining, but there was a cell block, camp style accommodation, and they were forced upon white education and white religion, and basically had a fairly miserable time. There was disease immediately introduced into the settlement, as expected, and quite a few people died at Wyballina and are buried there in the cemetery, and near the cemetery there, mainly in unmarked graves, which is something that I think the Tasmanian Aboriginal people are looking at marking the graves, or certainly bringing some more recognition to the cemetery area there in the near future. But it's such an amazing place. There was no one there when we went at all, and it's a very desolate sort of place, and it's a place of quiet reflection. You can visit the chapel. You can go inside the chapel. It's a very beautiful old building, and there's some interpretation there as well to read about what happened. And so that sort of happened in the late 1820s into the 1830s, and by 1847 they chose to move the remaining 50 out of the 200 that had survived. So only 50 survived, and they took them down to southeast Tasmania to Oyster Cove, and the place was abandoned. But it's a very sad and interesting story that I think we need to reflect on, and it's definitely worth visiting. The chapel itself makes a great photographic subject, but while you're there, have a think about what the Aboriginal people would have been going through when they lived there, taken away from their traditional homes, and quite a few of their children were actually then taken from them at Wyballina and taken to an orphanage back in Hobart, or an orphan school back in Hobart. So not only were they taken from their traditional homes on mainland Lutruwita. They were taken to, their children were then taken from them and rehoused back in Hobart. So it's a pretty sad and terrible story, and something that obviously will never be repeated. But yeah, definitely worth a bit of reflection. And I thought I'd make sure that we talked about it tonight.
Yeah, that was important, Nick. Thank you, and pretty thoughtful reflection there too. It's yeah, it's an interesting part of Tasmanian history in general. You know, that is still very alive and present and visible if you take the time and reach back in time collectively to what's available for us to reflect on. Lukey, are you happy if I go next?
Absolutely, go for it, mate.
Yeah, so we'll finish on a bang with Lukey because he's been there like 5 times more than we have, and he's been flying around the air a lot more than we have too. So I think I came back with close to 6,000 captures from this trip, and
wow.
I
think
kind
I
of
put
need to
800.
thank Luke for that to some extent. Because, there wasn't many mornings, afternoons, lunchtimes, sunsets, or astro night shoots that weren't being pushed or excited or frothed about to go and take on, and for very, very good reason. Oh my God. So I haven't been through most of them, images, to be honest, but I've got a few to give you a little bit of a taster. I'll just share my screen. How do we do it again?
You've done well to get them out so quickly, Paul. I certainly struggle with the turnaround after trips.
Well,
You're
I realised
machine.
I hadn't done as well as I thought because I've got a new R5 camera, and you can. So what I was doing is I was sitting in the back of the car as we're coming back late at night for these shoots and picking photos and putting it on my phone, and I just realised this afternoon when I went to edit, like, wait a minute, I've got to start all over again because they're not marked or worked on in a traditional way. But anyway, it's enough to tell a bit of a story. So we were very, very lucky in that we were flown over by Peter Barron himself, who runs Flinders Island Aviation. And we had the flexibility and fluidity to actually have a little bit of a say about where we flew. We flew a lot around the Furneaux Group and the islands just south of Flinders Island in particular, and the waterways there are just unbelievable. And here was my first taste, or your first sort of understanding of that those granite kind of strips that's kind of come all the way down from Wilsons Promontory and all the way past us through the Bay of Fires and down to Freycinet. And they really make the most phenomenal coastlines. There's so many crags and nooks and crannies and lines and gullies and compositions and splashes of color and the juxtaposition of the blues and oranges. It's just a lunchtime shot out the window, but I just wanted to give you that sense of how so much of the coastline is like this. It's sort of just unlimited compositions around Flinders, and in between all these islands are these stunning waterways and these beautiful braided sandbanks that just change all the time. And I think this is high tide, and I think they're going to be a lot more spectacular on the low tide when they're sort of coming out of the water itself and creating more sort of flow and currents around them as a result. So that's something, if you've got a chance to lean out the window on, it's well worth having your camera ready to go. And I always do that in general. In fact, when I book a flight anywhere, even on a commercial plane, I'll try and position myself on the side of the plane away from the sun. So if I'm shooting through perspex or a window, I'm not going to deal with the same level of reflection. And I specifically actually bought a couple of only $20 lens hoods that were kind of rubber, but they were extended, so I could actually push them against the window and cut out any reflection or glare. And I think on one of the flights I used a polarizer as well. So there's a few tricks to get around the fact that you're not hanging out of a helicopter in a harness with 100% pure visibility. So I tried to make the most of that. Some of the islands have these beautiful lagoons and gullies, and it had been raining, I think, for several days, or quite heavily the day before we got there. So a lot of them were pretty full. And there you get a sense of, even though from Google Earth it looks pretty flat, the terrain's actually a lot of those islands is quite steep in certain places and certain areas. And the beaches are just world class, and there's clean and wide and crisp and unfettered as probably any beaches in the world, really. And you imagine some of those islands have hardly been walked at all over time. But there's lots of little creeks and gullies that sort of go from the lagoons and big open kind of flat areas that dry out and evaporate and create different patterns and textures and shapes, and they'll be different every time we fly over them. So yeah, I'd like to head back for a more extended aerial trip. And to be honest, that was one of our focuses there, and we had arranged a chopper flight with doors off for 3 of us and on one day, but it was so windy that it just never happened. And this tiny window came up where we could do it, and that just happened, the chopper wasn't available, so we kind of missed the boat. So that's something they tend to fly in just about anything in the fixed wing planes, but the chopper out of Bridport is a bit smaller and a bit more susceptible to the wind. And Luke, do you know the name of this wreck?
Where is Luke?
No, he's gone. But anyway, it was a particular wreck we fly over, and it was really sitting out on its own and very, very visible and hugely photogenic. That's probably not the best capture I grabbed, but it gives you a sense of just how photogenic it is. So that was a bit of a pleasant surprise on one of our kind of loops. And as you get sort of further north and you get to some of the islands that are quite close to each other, they're very, very shallow. So there's these gorgeous kind of waterways and reefs and seagrasses that just come alive on different tides and in different lighting conditions. And aerial photography is one of those times where, particularly when you're shooting over water, it doesn't, in some ways it's actually better to shoot in higher light and the kind of light that traditionally you wouldn't be drawn to shoot landscapes, because the water reaches down and lights up deeper into the water and bounces off what's underneath. And a lot of those different structures sort of come alive in a way that wouldn't happen when the light is more angled or side on or just creating reflection off the water. So that's something I sort of like about that, because I'm not the best early riser in the first place. But here we are banking over one of the beautiful kind of seagrass sort of areas on the island, probably just south of Flinders. We're getting pretty close now because all these shots are in order of time. So we're pretty close to coming into Lady Baron Airport about now. I think we're just on the last little island. This might be Little Dog, maybe, just south of Lady Baron. And I'm interested to learn more and more of it. There's lots of little pocketed islands with their own sort of different history, and some of them are famous for certain, albatross or certain plant species or certain historical kind of events that have happened. Again, the waterways out there just pretty dreamy for somebody like me that loves doing sort of abstract work and color and texture and form, and most of these, literally are just out the window. I got lucky in that there was a tiny little section of window just big enough to poke the nose of my camera out on one side of the plane. I couldn't really shoot top down, but I won't tell the pilot, but I did lose a polarizer filter out the window of one of them because it wasn't screwed on properly. And just to remind you, there is a lot of agriculture on the island, and I thought it'd be nice just to give a sense of that. That is kind of a lot of the typical sort of view you'll get as you're driving through the central part of the island and north of Whitemark. I think this is close by. That has its own kind of rural and agricultural charm, the island as well, which I personally really enjoy. That's heading south, I think, for the first time to the very, very northern tip of the Strzelecki range. So the bigger peaks are further south, but that gives you a sense of, I think we've just jumped on the road down to Trouser Point, which is heading down to the southwest corner of the island. And we had some really nice sort of dappled light as we're heading down there. So our first night was on Trouser Point, which is a very traditional and place to photograph and easily one of the premier spots on the island. As you can see, walking around this coastline, there's just shot after shot after shot, and a little beach and little cove and rock pools and gullies, and the actual mountain ranges directly behind us, which lights up quite beautifully a lot of the times on sunset, or also has a lot of mist and cloud that's often over the top of it. I was sort of running around a bit like a headless chook because it was almost dark and I'd never been there before, and I was trying to come up with compositions. So it was a good reminder that in a perfect world with landscape photography, you walk a place first and start refining the kind of compositions you want and visualizing ahead of time, where the light's going to be and what kind of angles and juxtapositions and color palettes and design and structure you want in your images. So they're a little bit rushed, but I still, you get the sense of that beautiful juxtaposition at the very least of the textured colored lichens and the beautiful aqua greens and blues of the waterways. And that is sort of the Strzelecki range in the background there. And we did get a little bit of beautiful light there, but I was in the wrong spot, I think, at the time. I bought myself a long exposure kit from Nissi before I arrived on the island, and it got a hell of a workout. And I did find just having a set of very long exposure filters. I even use 15 stops quite a bit during the day just to, I guess, create more possibility during the day when the light's not necessarily ideal. I can still get creative and be a bit more interesting with the kind of compositions and scenes I'm going for. So this is at Killicranky, and actually if you walk slightly west and south, there's just the most beautiful rock beaches just continuing all around the coast. And I just had a field day around there. So much grit and texture and structure and form, and it was one of those kind of moody, windy mornings, and that just lent really beautifully to a longer exposure. I was probably using a 10 stop here. I think I had a 3-stop ND and a 6-stop CPL in built-in CPL ND, which is a great filter that Nissi makes, and that together sort of, you know, gave me probably 10, 12 second exposures, and that was just enough with the movement of the cloud and the movement of the water to give a bit more of a ambience and mood and kind of feel. And that area of rocks in particular that I found was, it's just so dramatic and so stunning. And it opened out into these beautiful sort of open, angled waterways where, you know, a huge amount of water sort of washes forward and back along the coastline and on the edge there. So don't get too close. That was probably a 16 mil, I think. Lukey and Andrew had wider 14 and 12 mil lenses, but I made do with my 16 as much as I could. And I just found this walking back, this beautiful. I'd love to actually photograph this just from the air, like from close down. It's a little bit blurry because of the movement of the wind across the surface of it, but it just created quite a striking sort of almost eerie sort of symbolic subject matter in the foreground, which I really enjoyed.
It's really cool.
And that's Killicranky in the background, and I think is this the archway over here, Luke? I think. There's a beautiful walk you can do from all the way along the beach out to the end here, and there's actually
it's called Stacky's Bite. Yeah,
right. Yeah,
and then there's Old Man Head above that, which is also a pretty awesome feature.
Yeah. So next time I actually get around there, and have a look for myself. But you want to give yourself a little bit of time for that one.
Well, that's the walk that actually goes round to the docks, isn't it, Luke?
Yeah, that's right. You could actually start at Killicranky, walk all the way around Killicranky Bay, and then all the way around to the docks and make a really good day of it. And if you're lucky, someone could pick you up at the end, I guess, too.
From what I learned from the island, I agree with Nick. I'd say that'd be one of the premier walks on the island, particularly from a photographic perspective. And you'd see a lot of things that very few people have seen or photographed before, because it's a bit of a committed thing to do, really, relative to just wandering out of your car. And this is just getting pretty close back to the beach. There's a beautiful set of houses and shacks sort of behind this area too, that I think you can hire out a few of them. No shortage of compositions. Just take your pick. This is slightly further north at Palana.
Yep.
And literally you drive as far as you can go on the road and you just stop. And this literally is about 4 feet from the front of your car. It's like, I was thinking, I'll walk up the coast and I'll find compositions. And I was like, well, wait a minute, this is amazing right in front of me. And so I spent like an hour and a half and I didn't get more than about 30 feet from the car, but it was just stunning. And again, you know, this is probably later in the day, sort of maybe 10:30, 11ish, I think, Lukey, from memory. And yet, you know, with your longer exposure filters, you can really still start playing around and making the most of the light that's there. And there was a little bit of dappled light coming through, so I sort of waited till it evened out and softened for where I wanted it to be lit up, and just got the exposures ready for when it's suited. I actually really enjoy the sort of feel of that image. It has a very silky, fluid kind of feel for quite a dynamic sort of place, which I really enjoy. And we went up to Northeast Bay twice, I think, and it really, really grew on me as one of my favorite areas. If you park right at the end of the headland and actually hang a right slightly south, that's the entrance to the most magnificent waterway. And again, you know, this is probably, what time would this have been, Luke? Do you remember the first day we went?
I think we were checking it out. It would be around midday, I think.
Yeah,
maybe
so
early afternoon.
Kind of time you traditionally sort of put your camera away. And I think, you know, when you travel and you're keen to photograph and you got people around you that are also keen, that aren't sort of chasing you down and hurry up and get back in the car, it's sort of, it's nice to be able to slow down and enjoy a place and appreciate some of the more less traditional ways you can photograph a place and interpret the energy and the flow and the movement that happens around you and the different dynamics. this is probably one of my favorites from the trip, and it's literally at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And you can see the movement of the water just, as the tide's kind of rushing out, a little bit of softness in the cloud. And this is the edge of basically the start of, it must be like 100-kilometre long beach, essentially. I haven't had a chance to process that one yet. That's just a straight raw shot.
You don't forget the tripod leg.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. Yeah. Good. Oh, well spotted, Lucky. I didn't even see it. There you go. And pay attention to your camera craft. Yeah, I mean, most of these are pretty straight images. This is
you only just got back, so that's fair enough.
Yeah, this is my first introduction to the docks, which is, as Nick said, it's. I feel like I hardly even scratched the surface. Really, it's just almost unfathomable. The kind of, it's probably about 15 different balefires rolled into one place, literally, and probably in much greater variety and shape and form and structure. And you could just spend days and days out there just exploring the different lighting conditions and finding different formations and different sort of lighting conditions and different compositions. It's really magnificent spot. Now, this is actually Fotheringay. So the very first night we were on just the south side of this peninsula. So, and this is the north side of the peninsula. So this is the Strzelecki Range running through here. White Mark's up here. Trouser Point's just over the hill on this side. And this is the kind of composition you can get at sunset in particular. And it's quite common to find some beautiful mist or fog or clouds that are resting over the top of the peaks. There's another wonderful area just over here that I tend to like photographing, and I'll show a few comps from as well. So it sort of doesn't have the same variety as Trousers Point, but it's still well worth a look. And another night, this same scene lit up with a huge rainbow running through here that lasted about 2 hours. So we ended up not going to Trousers Point purely for that. So even though it sort of had more variety there, it kind of have its day. This is a really, really late shot, probably just after dark, maybe about 6:30 at night. And this is quite common to catch the last of the moody kind of cloud structures just hanging onto the edge of the mountains. And this is that other area of rocks I pointed out just before. It's a little bit further east, a little bit closer to the range that you can walk up to fairly easily. It's definitely a composition that I quite enjoy. I went back there a few times. So I actually did a bit of a documentary kind of project, wandering around White Mark a few times and getting a sense of the town. And this is just, I only pulled out one shot just to give you a little bit of a sense of the feel of it. This is the main kind of news agency general store in town. And that's kind of the epicenter. The petrol station's just off to the right, the garage is over here, the pub's just next to it, next door, the supermarket's just to the left. This is kind of like at the beating heart of it, and it sort of gives you that sense of the kind of area and and the local farmers coming past, and the kind of color palette and design of a lot of the buildings is very sort of 60s, 70s kind of feeling. And it is like walking back in time a little bit, which I personally thoroughly enjoy. And yeah, I had to throw it in. Right in front of the Purple Swamp Hen is one of the ladies that works in the Purple Swamp Hen, and you'll find that most people work in 2 or 3 places on the island, not just one. And you'll see them working at the pub at night, and you'll see them at the supermarket the next day, and then you'll see them somewhere else, and that's just kind of how it works for people to get by on the island. And so, what's Kate's last name?
Mooney.
Kate Mooney, actually Nick Mooney's mother, is that right?
Sister,
sorry. And so if you've been in the conservation circles in Tassie, you would have heard of Nick Mooney. And anyway, she has taken on the mantle as the guardian of the wombats on the island. And sadly, but quite genuinely, there's so much roadkill that she gets gifted a lot of baby wombats. And for the first time in my life in 31 years, I actually hit a wombat. It wasn't dark. It was actually probably an hour before. And we had a rocket ship one that just shot in front of us, and it was pretty graphic and quite disturbing. But we did the right thing, and we searched for a baby, and we found one. And Lukey in particular and I sort of worked together to get it out, and it was young enough that we worked out it hadn't been out of a pouch before. And so we ditched our sunset shooter course and went straight to Kate's place with it wrapped up in a blanket. And Little Pecan is now his name, and I am very happy to say he's doing quite well at the moment, and he's hanging out with these guys. And we went to Kate's house one night and spent a good couple of hours cuddling about 6 or 7 baby wombats, which was one of the probably highlights of my adult life, I reckon. It was absolutely stunning. two of them made it home in Luke's jacket, and to the point where they just didn't want to leave. It was beautiful, amazing creatures. At least, you know, they're some of the cutest creatures I've ever seen. These sort of baby wombats. I think that one might even be a video. I think just to give you a little sense of the little cuddlies. They like sort of wiggling around each other, and they're always trying to dig under things. So they even like sort of dig under each other and try and climb under each other to find little snuggly bits. And you know, they've got a bit of a pecking order, you know, where one's the boss and one's not. That's the littlest one trying to find a little snuggly spot underneath everybody else. And Kate's sort of kind enough that she'll often let total strangers and passers by come and interact with them just right in front of the shop, right in the main street of town. So that was a huge highlight for us. And the fact that we were actually, you know, and we actually were organised to go to her place, which is not a public thing. That was kind of an invite only thing. And her house is full of the most beautiful artwork and pictures of wombats, and they're kind of living in there. And there's a whole bunch more. I think her house is about to fall down because she's got so many wombat warrens sort of underneath their place. It's losing its structural integrity. What's happening here? So moving on a little bit more. This is another time we went to the docks at sunset, and I did take the trek a little bit further north. I just bolted, and I just thought, even if I just go for a walk, I'm going to have a bit of a look around. And again, you know, it's one of those things where you're running around so fast and the light comes out, and you haven't really organised a composition, but you just grab something anyway. That's kind of one of those sort of shots. But right near the end, I found this rock Nick was talking about, and it was actually this is probably about an hour after dark, actually, this shot. And I was stumbling around, just seeing silhouettes of shapes and just going, goodness me, look at this incredible sort of feature, and then trying to figure out how to focus in the dark and all the rest of it. But it's well worth sort of spending a bit of time. I'm really keen to do the rest of the walk now, Nick, and get around further. And I'm not much of an astro shooter, but I tried my hand on this, and I happen to have one of Lukey's amazing astro lenses in my bag. They loaned me generously, had a 12mm hour, and I decided to do a little bit of light painting. And it was probably a bit early in the night to do traditional astro because it was pretty high in the sky. So this is actually really, really low, shooting very, very high up with a 12mm.
It was almost directly overhead at that point. Yeah, so you did well to get it in.
So I was a bit lucky to sort of pull off that composition, but I gave it a few goes, and I tried my hand at a bit of light painting, and I found that a little bit more from the side, sort of you can see how the light sort of falls away from left to right a little bit, gave that shark fin a bit more sort of dimension. So I'm reasonably happy I came away from the island with one astro when I'm hanging out with
one thing you probably don't realize why it's so bright on the right with that picture is actually that there was zodiacal light that night as well. So it was actually zodiacal light that was actually lighting up the cloud behind towards the right there, because that's where the sun had set. So that's actually the reason for the bright patch there.
Just explain that for us, Luke. What's
so zodiacal light's a phenomenon you see generally only in very dark sky environments, because it's actually quite a faint kind of light on the horizon, and it's caused by space dust that's in the outer atmosphere or outside of Earth, and basically it's the sun after it's set can still illuminate that space dust given the angle that it's on. It generally is most prevalent around the equinoxes, so we were pretty close to the equinox actually when I think it's today, isn't it? So that was also handy, and I haven't seen it many times, and very rarely in Tasmania. I did see it on Mount Wellington a few weeks ago, but you do need it to be very dark to be able to see it. You'll see a sort of a dome of light, or a sort of, it's almost like a cone shape coming off the horizon.
We had new moon conditions, didn't we, Luke?
What was that? Sorry, mate?
We had new moon conditions, didn't we?
Yeah, it was pretty dark, very dark new moon conditions. You wouldn't really see it under any sort of strong moon at all. With that, you need to be away from light pollution. I mean, the classic place I've seen it is around Uluru, where there's very dark skies and pretty much no light pollution, and you see it extremely clearly out there. So so
definitely some of the clearest skies I've ever seen anywhere in the world.
Yeah, it was. I call it A1 skies. You don't really get any better than that, because there's just no very clear sky, no light pollution, and no moonlight as well. So Yeah, it was brilliant.
Yeah, definitely one of the best astro places I've been. Where are we here? So we're back for this is as Nick was attesting to 4:15 a.m. start to get up to Northeast Bay River for sunrise, whilst dodging 65 wombats and wallabies on the way, which Luke did extremely well, by the way. And this is probably about 20 minutes before sunrise, maybe. It's just that kind of soft, kind of ambient glow, and you can see that little bit of transition and the sky and that little gradient that's here in the background. So this is slightly north or around where I was before. Like this waterway I shot is just over here in the start of that huge long beach, and I couldn't find the other guys. Didn't know where they went, so I just kind of sat on the side and worked some of these beautiful lines. That's actually the big rock structure that Nick shot before, with the water sort of rushing around it and different kind of moodier light. I hang back and sort of had that in the background, a lot of my compositions, and I ended up shooting quite a lot of portrait sort of shape compositions around this place, which is probably a little bit less traditional, but I just kept finding flow and nice foregrounds, and I was trying to remember to do my best to focus stack so I don't get caught out later on if I actually want to print them later. But yeah, magnificent morning. It was really, really beautiful. It was a good light for quite a long time. And here again, traditionally you probably put the camera away about now. It's getting pretty late, and maybe hour and a half after sunrise now. But I just tend to think, well, I'm here anyway. Why not try and play around and try and get something? So I whacked on probably a 10 stop and a polarizer and kept playing around and looking for different things. I think we've got some better ones. And here is Egg Bay again. And these here are the traditional sort of eggs that you find. And as far as I know, they're not really anywhere else on the island like that. So it's really
not that sort of rounded and en masse like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not quite sure what it is about this particular place that's sculpted and shaped in that way, but it might be something to do with all these little kind of Luke found these 3 or 4 little green pools in a row. This is actually, I think, a 12mm shot, so it's pretty wide. And we worked sort of those shots for a while. Again, we got there probably, well, it's definitely a sort of late morning sort of shoot, wasn't it, Luke? And we had the sun there for a while, and then it slowly sort of softened away, and it actually started creating really beautiful light to just focus on the rocks themselves. Because when you get sort of a little bit of a soft overcasted light, it's still shapely, but it still has enough direction and to create a little bit of form and dimension in your subject matter. And there's still a little bit of interest in the sky as well. So again, this is on one of Luke's 12mm Darling that I borrowed. Getting in a little bit closer to give you a sense of just how beautifully shaped the rocks are. They're really gorgeous to touch and feel and just to see, really. Andrew hasn't made an appearance yet, so here he is. He's a professional videographer and a great photographer, and keen as buttons. So we got a few shots of each other here and there on the trip. And I just actually ended up putting the tripod away and just started playing with different compositions of the different rocks and the grasses. And I really enjoyed Nick's shot actually, with that broader scene of and that separation between 2 different rock areas and 2 different sort of planar kind of areas in the fore and background. But there's so much sort of grit and form and sort of guts to the rocks. It's quite a treat to sort of play around with, and that kind of overcast light is actually perfect for this sort of thing. For direct sunlight to be too much, and angled sunlight in a way from early would probably have too deeper shadows. So it was a really wonderful time to just dance with the rocks. And there was some really beautiful I'm not sure what those plants are, Luke. The ones that kind of drape between the fishes and the rocks.
I think that's pig face, actually, like a succulent. Yeah,
it's like a succulent, but it's sort of kind of purple and magenta.
Yeah, it's another form of another species of pig face. So.
Yeah, it's sort of a smaller one, and basically the more salt that's in the leaves, or the sort of I don't know, leaves is the right word for it, being a succulent, but the more salt that it takes up, the pinker it gets. So you'll see them being pinker when they're closer to you can sort of see.
Yeah, you can see the green areas here and the more purple sort of areas as they get closer to the salt.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good to know. Like, I wasn't aware of that.
I didn't know that. Thanks.
This is us racing down to Castle Rock, and you can just see we've got this. We're like, we're always looking around the island. Where are we going to go? Where's the light going to be? And to be honest, it was quite different between the north and the south of the island. Like often we look up north and it was cloudy. We look down south and it was clear. Or sometimes vice versa. And so we'd literally be every night just trying to figure out where to go. And it was quite tricky to read where the cloud was going to be on the traditional kind of online sort of way. So we really ended up having to use our eye quite a lot. And we raced up to Castle Rock pretty late in the piece, and we got a little bit caught by this cloud band right on the horizon, but we had probably 15 minutes of, or probably only about 10 minutes of light. I think it was really clear. And me seeing that it was going to be only clear for that short period of time, was racing down there and not paying much attention, and managed to go down in a screaming heap, shall we say, that gave Luke and Andrew a bit of a fright.
It's it's actually quite a literal phrase there, isn't it?
Yeah, it was quite a boisterous discovery from the boys. I got my foot stuck in a tree root, and then pulled me into a hole, and combine that with a very large popping sound that was one of my ligaments going. I was down for the count, and being a stubborn bugger, I dragged myself down here and took this shot anyway. And that's I was hobbling around using my tripod as a crutch. But yeah, I quite like the shot. It's quite clean and simple, and this is probably a different angle than you saw from Luke's shots. It's a little bit more front on and probably south to north facing. And you'll actually see a little sign on the top, and I'll have to double check, but I've got a friend of mine who's a prolific climber. He's done about 2,000 first ascents around the world, and I think he might have done one of the first ones of this, or at least he got he was allowed to name the climb, and there's probably different routes to get up there, which all have different names. But one of his friends named it for him, and he called it Hancock's Knob. And Nick's last name's Hancock, so it's quite hilarious. But probably don't spread that one around. But it definitely brought a smile to my eye when I finally found the place that I'm pretty sure it is. Channeling my Ricardo de Cunha just on the wharf there. There was this really interesting, really low rainbow on the horizon that I've never quite seen. And I just waited for that moment with the birds to move. And this is when we had our one rest morning, I think, of the entire trip, where we actually went down and had a beautiful brunch at the wharf there, which I highly recommend. Again, moving through this is probably the road between Whitemark and Lady Baron, and there's just a few of these wind turbines. So I think there's maybe, 4? I'm not sure.
There's just the 2. Yeah.
Just the 2 there. I'm not sure if I saw some in other places, but yeah, I mean, the island's a lot of the island's solar, a lot of the locals, and actually Annabelle Apes, who we went to dinner with, she's totally off the grid, for instance, and I imagine a lot of the water is rainwater only as well. So it's only in fairly recent times I think they've had the full workout. This is just literally out the window as we're driving, but again, just giving you a sense of more of the inner heart of the island is a lot like this, particularly in the south. This is our special surprise beach. Like Luke said, he'd been to Yellow Beach before and sort of walked down and went, oh, it's all right, and sort of walked back. And we actually probably arrived at a beautiful time with really, really soft ambient light, and we're tucked away from the wind there, which is quite incessant on the island, really. And we just slowed down and got some really beautiful compositions, just literally just a few minutes walk from the car, just around the corner in these little bays and little coves. The main beach in the car is sort of just down the road over here. This is a lovely spot to shoot in this area, and I just kept walking around and found this lovely leading line down here, which I thoroughly enjoyed. And of course, the boys came and lined up behind me afterwards. These buggers, and Nick would have told them to bugger off, but I didn't.
Yeah, and I would have been the first one there. Yeah.
So this is actually heading down to Trousers Point again. I think in that night we actually ended up at Fotheringay because we saw this rainbow and just thought this is going to be way more visible from Fotheringay, which is the northern side of the same point the Trousers Point on, and that's just out the window of the car driving down. Luke's got some epic ones, and this is what we came across at Fotheringay itself. That's a really, really quick grab, but it's this case, it's quite tidal, so this was very, very low tide, so it's quite a different sort of structure. I think this was actually Luke's doing a time lapse, sort of right on the water's edge over there, which I'm looking forward to seeing.
Yeah, that's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah, I think. Actually, this might be my first attempt at a time lapse movie ever. And you can see the lights sort of fading, but so I missed it with the rainbow. I think Luke got it all with the rainbow, but I was impressed that with the help of my techno genius mates, they helped me figure out actually how to do that sort of stuff in camera. It's a much faster way because it does it all in camera, Nick. You don't need to post-produce it at all. It's called a time-lapse movie, which I found in my R5 kind of by accident. And same composition as the other night. And again, you know, this once again, you're caught on the end here with this beautiful kind of fading clouds coming down.
Did you get that cloud 2 nights?
Yeah, we did. The first night lit up like a golden sort of like nothing I'd just about ever seen, and this was probably a little bit softer and gentler on the light, but we had the rainbow running through the middle, literally. Oh, it was at least an hour and a half, wasn't it, Luke? It was there. It was just there the whole time.
Yeah, it was putting on a show. It was basically a perpetual rainbow. As the sun was setting, you could actually see the rainbow moving. Obviously, it's on the opposite side as the sun. Every now and then, it would actually form a full rainbow and also reach around to Trousers Point as well. But we're glad we're at Fotheringay because we're certainly seeing that rainbow for a long time. Yeah,
You lucky bastards.
Yeah, this is straight in front of our accommodation. So just about everywhere you go, like you literally just walk 20 seconds down from the front door and there's a whole coastline like this. It's like, thanks very much. And we went so many places, I kind of forgot till the very last morning that to actually kind of shoot straight out front. So a little bit late on the light, but at the same time, it was definitely worth cruising around. So here's me heading back to the airport with my totally stuffed foot. Well, it was a fairly appropriate image to be close to finishing on, and I'm still making use out of that bandage. I washed it and given it another go, but it's still a bit swollen after 4 or 5 days later. But I'm not in too much pain, which is good. And then we jumped on a plane, and what I love about Lady Baron is it's like there's just grass. It's like a paddock. And so basically, ended up we having like 4 planes there at once or something. Was it like everyone came?
Yeah.
We're all like
a taxi rank.
And we're swapping between planes, and we're sharing baggage between planes. I think our gear came between 2 or 3, at least 2 planes, I think. And you know, dogs running around and jumping in the planes. It was just fantastic. And we got a pilot. I can't sure his last name, but Rob. He's been flying for 57 years, I think. He's one of the. Is it the oldest operating pilot in Tassie, or certainly?
Yep, oldest commercial pilot in Tassie. Yep.
Yeah, absolute gentleman of a man and an exquisite human being, and he was a delight. And so we sat there waiting for the other planes that were swapping people and bags and so on with for a while, and had a great chat to him. And this is just flying slightly north of Strzelecki as we head out. We had a bit of a different route on the way back, where we went out to Badger Island and flew down south sort of more directly over the water. So this is Trouser Point here. So Fotheringay, where I just showed you before, and this is where the rainbow was, just up here. And then Trousers Point is just on the other side, sort of in this way. So, and then White Mark's just north of us over this way. So the road sort of tucks down along the edge of the hills there. And you can actually go further down around the corner and exploring, which Luke and Andrew did on the last morning. They ended up bush bashing for fair way, so probably was a good idea. I wasn't there with my bung foot. And you don't need to do that. So I'm still trying to figure out which island is which, but you can see that little sort of airstrip in the middle of the island there, just a nice wee grass patch. Maybe I'll get out there.
That's Chapel Island, that one. You can see the airstrip there.
Chapel. Okay, yeah. I was thinking it might be.
Yeah. Yep. So, I can't see the tiger snakes though.
I can't see the tiger snakes, but they're there. Don't worry about it. And I'm not sure what this was in the background. I wonder. I need to get my map.
That might be Cape Barron back there, I think.
From that angle, yeah. Actually, it's big enough that it probably is, isn't it? We went so far off the coast just then. But anyway, that's me from my very, very short stint in my 6,000 image sort of library from that trip. That's going to take me a good while to go through, but super happy with the variety and scope of what I got in a week. It was incredibly prolific place to photograph, and we were just shooting most days, just about all day during the day, and most mornings and evenings and some nights, and you could just, I don't know, I still feel like I was just scratching the surface, really, to be honest.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those places where it's you do need repeat visits, and I think you can now see why I sort of trip over myself to try and get back there. So it's certainly Yeah, it's one of, for me, it's also a bit of a challenge because it's one of those places that's really amazing, but it's at the same time, it's, you know, really hard to talk about because you don't want the place to change too much by too many people getting over there. I think the cost of flights to get over there, that, you know, there's an entry cost for people to make it over there anyway, but it's certainly one of those places where you know, you do hope that it doesn't become a huge commercialized sort of place, and it can remain that really quaint, really charming sort of place where you can still go to a beach and have it to yourself and that kind of thing. So hopefully by us sharing with you, we're not adding to issues like that down the track, but at the same time, you know, it's also a good opportunity to show some of the amazing places that there are around us in the world, especially when it's hard to travel and that kind of thing. So
yeah, it's interesting you bring that up, Luke, actually, because I was thinking about that when I was over there and when we were putting together this show, exactly the same thing. It's not, it's, they rely on tourism. It's really a big deal for them, and I think the problems with getting there is enough to restrict it in terms of it not becoming too popular.
yeah, you're basically looking at $500 minimum to get there
Yeah,
at a start, and then once you get there, you need a car and you need a com, and you know, it does get pretty pricey.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that makes me feel more comfortable about gushing like we have been tonight, because I did think about that. And the other thing is, it's a very it's quite a hardy place. It's not a sensitive alpine area.
Yeah,
The
true.
vegetation is coastal.
It's all granite, all rock. Yeah,
granite. It's rock. It's hardy. You can't really do a lot of major damage by exploring. So yeah, it's good in that regard as
Yeah,
well.
it's a fairly robust environment, relatively speaking.
It's just the animals really that you have to worry about in particular. But
I really hope they can put a virtual fence in at some point, or something like that. That along there, they kind of desperately need that kind of infrastructure, I think.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Your
cool.
turn, Luke.
Yeah, I'll take the floor now and just show a few of the shots that I've taken over the time there. It's only really a fraction of the shots that I've actually been able to capture while I've been there, and on the several visits. And to be honest, given my ability in terms of processing stuff after trips, it's I've got a lot more that's hidden away on the hard drives, which I need to get to. I'll start off with one that I have managed to get to, and that's Wyberlina Chapel. So I was able to duck out during a dinner actually, and photograph the chapel. I could see that the light, or it was basically, as I was saying, A1 condition. So I had to do it. And I haven't really processed this shot yet, but it gives you an idea of how clear the skies can be. And that's the other end of Wyberlina Chapel to what Nick had earlier. And that's, yeah, you can actually see, obviously the door's open. You can look right into the chapel there. So it's, I'm surprised that's open, because I used to worry about wombats getting in there and digging it all up. So hopefully, I didn't even notice while I was there that was actually open all the way through. It's only after a quick edit I could see that, as I was only there for about 10 minutes. So anyway, that sort of shows the clear skies, and it's also a shot I'd been looking to do for a while actually, knowing that faced west. So that was really pleasing to do. I've got quite a lot of aerial photos here, and there's a combination of I've been lucky enough to do a few plane flights, helicopter flights, and I have actually been able to get a commercial drone permit as well to fly at Flinders Island. It's really well worth noting that the vast majority of the coastline is actually parks managed land from the Tas Parks. And so if you're going to launch a drone on parks managed land, you actually do need to have a commercial filming permit to be able to do that. And so I actually had to write down, apply, say I'm going to fly at these locations, launching at this place, this is going to be my flight plan, and all of those kind of aspects to actually get that approval. And so that's just really worth noting that, yeah, you have to be, it's not like it's open slather on drones over there. You do really need to know where you can and can't fly. And so I'd really be careful about that, given how much of the island is actually parks managed land. So that's my disclaimer kind of spiel, I suppose, when it comes to that. But yeah, it's well worth noting, I think. So this is Killiecrankie Bay. In this is in a previous visit. Most of these shots are now from previous visits, and the creek is actually not flowing much in this shot. Whereas when we were just there, they'd had quite a bit of rain, and it was actually quite beautiful to see the tannin-stained waters flowing out onto the creek, onto the beach and into the water. You can see a little bit of the residual tannin here, but I think it could also be maybe from the seaweed. But yeah, and this is the settlement of Killiecrankie here as well. It's called, yeah, so there's a Killiecrankie settlement, it's Killiecrankie Bay, it's Killiecrankie Creek, and that's Mount Killiecrankie. So you can't get enough of Killiecrankie over there. So that's, yeah, and that's the setup, and you can see some of the fishing boats that are sort of, I guess, permanently moored in that sort of area there. It's quite protected in that little bay. Otherwise, out here it would get pretty hectic. And I think these are some olives that have been planted down there.
That's right. I've got some olive oil sitting on my bench.
These are actually all a bit out of order, so my apologies if I'm switching between similar places or similar shots. This is Sawyers Bay, and so what I really loved about this shot is you've got the, I guess it's a bit of a natural flow of water that comes down the rock, and so you actually get a much darker area of, it's almost darker algae rather than it being lichen, and then you've got the beautiful red lichens here, and you get these little white spots and black spots, and it's just very textural. And I really do love these coastal, almost like spinifex sort of grasses. They certainly prickle your shins like spinifex do. And these are really, yeah, just very photogenic, I find, as well, especially around these sort of granite outcrops. So I thought, when I saw this scene, it was just a really beautiful scene, and it all leads really nicely onto Mount Killiecrankie, Mount Strzelecki, which is there in the distance as well. So this is a shot of Trousers Point. I've got a few nicer ones in this in a better light, but gives you an idea of the beautiful beaches that they have there. And then you've also got the granite outcrops as well, with a lichen over them as well. So beautiful spot. This is yellow beach area, and what I like about that is I found it interesting. I think the moorings have actually, as the boats have drifted around, have actually formed these circles in the water. So I included that one. Probably one of the most spectacular aerial scenes is the base of Mount Killiecrankie. This is Stacky's Bight in here in Old Man Head. And then that's Mount Killiecrankie there, all up. So yeah, really stunning spot there. And you can walk along the coastline here and get into Stacky's Bight, which is a really spectacular little beach. And there's a natural archway there, which is quite a beautiful. It's actually quite hard to photograph, but it is a beautiful spot to hang out. And this is another shot of the actual archway here, you can see, with Old Man's Head in the distance there. So yeah, it's really special spot. Another one a bit wider this time. And then, yeah, the sort of classic, I think the Tourism Tas have been using this one a little bit in the promotion for the new flights as well. So that's a top down of Stacky's Bight. And you can see there's actually almost two symmetrical bays there with the archway in the center there. So it's quite a nice little spot. This is Lily's Bay. You've got this old jetty that's sort of derelict. There's actually quite a lot of seaweed on the beach now. It's a bit unfortunate. It does show that the beaches can change quite dramatically between visits. And so, yeah, in this case, it's quite clean, and there's some old sort of steel crates and things still embedded in the beach. So it doesn't really line up very well for sunrise or sunset, to be fair, but it's still a very fascinating sort of long exposure location as well. The other thing that's really interesting, and I might have more pictures of this, is you get these ripples in the sand ripples off the coast, but then little bits of seaweed break off and settle in them, and you get this kind of zebra stripe sort of pattern in the water, which I really haven't seen anywhere else. There's only a couple bays in the Flinders that seem to have that that kind of feature. And there's another wider shot of the jetty going in there. There's another one. This is much better showing. That's the jetty there, and you've got the these awesome zebra patterns in the water, which I always think are quite a stunning sort of natural feature. And you'll go back there the next time and it won't look like that at all. This is Allports Beach, really beautiful beach in Emitter. My friend Rob there walking along. And Trousers Point on a much nicer day. Beautiful sort of greeny blue waters there, meeting with the red lichen and the sort of yellowy granite and the white beaches and big mountains and green sheiks. It's kind of a bit visual feast really, which is we all love to photograph. And that's a wider view of Trousers Point, where you've got the main beach here and then another little bay coming in there.
What an amazing pano, Luke.
Yeah, you can kind of see the layout too, and how stretched out Mount Strzelecki really is. You've got, this is the feature of the mountain that you shoot from Fotheringay, and this is the feature that you shoot from Trousers, and it stretches the whole way between those two beaches. So yeah, it's really quite amazing how that works. And that's the view down Trousers Point to Mount Chapel Island in the distance, with a beautiful natural curve going on there, and a top down of Trousers there as well. I need to put a bit more dehaze to get some of that that sheen off the water, but yeah, it's beautiful.
I didn't make it around to that second beach. I didn't even know it was there.
Yeah, there's you can walk around, and then there's some nice shots here and great shots looking back that way, and even a few over here. So it's there's plenty to see there. That's for sure. It's sort of another view of that second beach, and then looking towards Strzelecki there.
Is that a vertical pano though?
Yeah, that's a vertical pano. Yeah. Yeah, that's my friend Rob doing a bit more of the posed shots, I suppose, but it's always nice when you're on a job for tourism to have people in the image to help connect people to the scene. And that's a white.
Fotheringay?
Yeah, that's Fotheringay. Yeah, at high tide, you can see that there's pretty much as high as it gets. Actually, there's no beach left at all. And then when it's low tide, the water can be way out here. So there's quite a tidal shift, especially in that particular beach. Yeah, you can really see how high the water level is there. Yeah, I really quite like the colours in this one at Fotheringay. That's probably a heli shot looking from the across to the docks, which is over here. And then we've got, just the coastline. That'll be Polana in there and all of that. So it's not as more of a documentary shot than anything. That's a better view of the docks and really shows the amazing structures of Mount Killiecrankie and all of the foreshore of the beach there. It shows why it's such a fascinating area to explore, I think. Getting in a bit closer now, seeing all the little bays and rock stacks out in the water. And another, again, you can see the lower cliffs, and then it goes all the way up to the sides here, and that's Killiecrankie Bay and Killiecrankie back here. Looking in a bit closer, and that's another view of Killiecrankie Bay. I think that's a heli shot, that one. And so it gives a nice perspective of where the actual the creek is in relation to the beach and that kind of thing. So what's we got next here? Whoops. That's just a different angle. That's Egg Beach, sort of at a higher tide. Egg Beach probably isn't quite as spectacular. Having a low tide means that you can see a lot more of the eggs, I suppose. And so in this case, it was a bit higher, but that's Royden Island in the background there as well. So certainly have a lot more shots from there. This is a heli shot from above Northeast River, and you can see that there's this really awesome sort of coastal bit here that separates the lagoon and has these awesome little features. It must have been quite a high tide here too, because the water's actually seeping up towards the spit here, almost totally joining here actually, which was nothing like that last time. Another view again. There's the sister islands in the distance, and you've got this really quite amazing sort of channel here where the water comes out and in quite a tidal inlet there. Another view looking the other way down the coastline. It really shows the eastern coastline, how long it is, and how this has got to be one of the longest beaches in Tasmania actually. Just in terms of how uninterrupted it really is, and just how far it stretches down. It's pretty remarkable. I've often thought it might be a lot of the same, but it would be really cool to walk down that one day. It would take a long time, I think, and you'd get very strong carb muscles after walking in the sand for so long. But
it'll be 60 kilometres long.
Yeah, it's a decent decent distance. Yeah. Yeah, that's another nice shot of the inlet looking towards it's getting close to sunset here, and the sun shining off the water, and then Northeast River. So like as an aerial location, it's very, very spectacular.
Yum.
Yeah, it's probably my favorite, just really highlighting the beautiful channel that's coming in here as well, and there's quite a few other interesting features in the lagoons further back as well from an aerial perspective. I tend to shoot a lot of oblique aerials rather than top down, so I like the grand scene from the air, so that's what I'm showing here. It's more of the docks again. And that's looking back towards Palana and the Northeast River area. And Killiecrankie Bay. Yeah, so I shot a lot around there. But I do think this is one of the most stunning, similar to, akin to the Wineglass Bay aerial shot, which is quite a spectacular shot in its own right. It's all ports and with a long exposure. It's got a really awesome little cliff at the end of the beach. It's worth shooting. This is a bit more of a close-up of it. Very interesting feature. And you also have really great options for astro. I showed an astro shot earlier, and this is near Sawyers Bay Shacks where we're staying. There's this amazing rock here, and my friend Rob got up on the rock, and that's just his actual his watch actually lighting up. When it's so dark like this, you don't want to have a very bright light source because it will just blow out essentially. Even his watch did after a period of time. So but yeah, quite a stunning location. That's it without any people on it. You can also see the glow of the zodiacal light actually behind the rock as well. So it's actually created this really beautiful kind of highlight behind the rock and almost spotlights it in a way. I've also done a bit of editing to bring out some of the light in the foreground there as well, and have lit that also with a very faint light as well. So trying to
I had a crack at climbing up there for looking to do a repeat, and without knowing the area, I tried to climb up the rock face in the front, which was a really, really bad idea.
Yeah.
And then I made it around the back and got to the top, but it was so windy, there's no way I could stand on it. So there's a few seated lotus position shots of me that are going to pop out at some stage.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting to those. And this is my friend Rob. He's pretty much an expert. Calling someone an expert poser sounds wrong actually, but that's what he is. And so yeah, he's doing a good job there on that spot. So yeah, definitely really nice to have such a kind of a cool spot to take a photo so close to where you're staying. Yeah, and that's another one. So yeah, certainly had a fun shoot there. This I don't know why the noise is so bad in this one, but you can really see the zodiacal light here as well, with the shacks that we're staying in there, and it just shows you how much of a good night this was. But yeah, I do need to process that one better. Some of the crays on the island. This was at Killiecrankie. They'd sent a boat over and actually got out one of the big pots, I can't remember what they're called, that are actually sitting in the bay. And then if anyone has an order for the crayfish, they'll actually go out and grab them out of the pot and bring them into shore. So that obviously had a reasonable order. So they had gone out and got some. So that was pretty cool. That's Castle Rock at sunset. Beautiful spot for sunset. It's probably one of the premier sunset locations on the island, I think, just for how it's laid out. If you get those beautiful, it seems to be always where, for some reason while I'm there, I get a sunset where there's a horizon gap, and you've got all this cloud and then just a thin slit here where the actual sun can get in through, and it just seems to always happen like that every trip I'm there. So I'm very grateful for that. Bit more trousers, just working a few different compositions. That's the second beach around Paul. Fotheringay, yeah, it's my friend Robert Fotheringay there. Different color edit on that one. And then the Crackit Fotheringay here, which leads down towards the peak and some of the cloud-capped mountains there. More Killiecrankie. This is a good one to show the size of the actual, the size of the rock. That's Rob standing there, yeah, so it's obviously pretty huge shape there. Trousers, more trousers point. Really love this little, you get these, I think it's called nama. It's where you have a sort of depression in the actual granite, and it sort of forms a little pool, they're all over the place that you can, really great features to actually photograph. And that's Northeast River with the rock in the distance and this awesome groove in the foreground granite. Trousers again. Yeah, really great place to get some water flow in the foreground. And then we're back to the start. And I thought what I'd do, just to finish everything off, is of course you can't leave without some baby wombat shots, or just wombat shots in general. The island's pretty much, wombats are kind of one of the for me, I think of wombats when I think of Flinders. It's just like sort of seems to be, I mean, if there's maybe Maria Island takes the cake in terms of a place where you're guaranteed to see one, but you'll also be guaranteed to see them on Flinders as well, because they're just everywhere. And I just think they're the most amazing creatures, especially when you see little tackers like this being looked after. And you know, it's a happy sad sort of thing whenever you get these little critters, because obviously they are only being looked after because they are an orphan. And so, you know, the people that look after them are very committed to raising these and giving them a proper life. And, you know, if there weren't people around to look after these wombats, you know, they'd just be left in their mothers to die essentially after they were hit by cars. So it's a pretty incredible thing that they do, and they essentially live their life around their wombats. So it's pretty special. You can see that they're still kitted out with a pretty decent set of claws, even though they're pretty young. So you still don't want to get on the wrong side of them if you can help it. Yeah, there's a few very cuddly moments for sure with these sort of critters.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they all sort of have their own unique little personality as well, and they're kind of yeah, their own way, I suppose. Yeah, certainly sometimes a bit cheeky, and sometimes they can be a bit shy as well. So that's Kate Mooney. She's the wombat lady of Flinders Island, as she calls herself, and she's quite a sort of well known on the island for what she does, and also works in all sorts of places. I think she drives the school bus and has worked at the general store and this store and that store. So, but also has a gin named after her as well. So yeah, she's quite a feature of the island in her own right. And I think that's one other thing that I really love about Flinders is the culture and the people, and everyone knows everyone, and it's one of those sort of places. And Kate's very welcoming, and if you do want to see the wombats, you can get in contact with her, and I'm sure she'll show you the wombat feeding at her place. Yeah, so very cool, guys. So that's it for the wombats.
Yeah.
And that's getting pretty close to time, Luke.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't mind talking about next week when you guys are ready.
Oh yeah, well look, I think that sort of wraps it up. I don't know if there's been any questions. I haven't actually been on YouTube, to be honest, to see if there's been any questions on YouTube. But
final thing. So the other thing I was going to say, Luke and I, one of the reasons we did this trip is to scout it for potentially doing some tours. So and with it sort of opening up, and we're only talking maybe just a few people, quite intimate, but if anyone is interested in finding those nooks and crannies that you'll have a lot of fun trying to find on your own with no signs, and come with a couple of photographers, then feel free to email Luke or I. We're definitely going to get some out there this year, and maybe the following. But yeah, any words to add to that, Luke?
Yeah, I mean, I've been going back there many times, and I still want to keep going back there. So if people can come along, that'll be good, and then I can keep going over there. No, it's definitely something that I'm very keen to share with other people too. Gives us a chance to get over there ourselves and share these awesome places with people. It's just going to be trying to keep it very small numbers, sort of high value with smaller numbers is probably the way to go. Very casual, just a chance to explore and see some of the amazing places on the island with some people that have been over there quite a few times. So if you're interested at all in coming over, please just send myself or Paul an email, and we'll be able to sort of tee up a time. We're looking at doing at least one trip before the end of the year again. So yeah, just get in contact if you're keen. Yeah, so that's the plug. So I might pass you over to you, Nick, just to talk about next week's guest.
I'm going to quickly blow my trumpet. I had an experience, I think it was the night before I blew my ankle out, where I got a strange message from New Zealand on my phone, and my phone didn't work over there because there's no it was just Optus. It doesn't work on the whole island. And I was like, what's this, master? Some message. Congratulations. I was like, what? And it turns out I won my Grandmaster of Photography in New Zealand, and they were ringing me, and of course the phone didn't freaking work, and my moment of glory on the live ceremony was gone. And my good mate Tony Carter, who's actually 7-time New Zealand Photographer of the Year, he figured it out, and he used half of his speech for winning his own category. Congratulate me as such a champion. So anyway, I just felt like sharing that because I haven't really told many people, and I was pretty proud of it.
That is an absolutely amazing achievement, mate. Grandmaster of Photography is a lifetime achievement, and you've done beautifully, mate. So
you had to put up with me calling him Grand Poobah and Grandmaster Flash and all sorts of things all trips. So he really thoroughly enjoyed that as well.
Yeah, it's like
going on about, it's not every day you get to shoot with the Grandmaster. Oh, geez.
I had that about 50 times.
Yeah.
I was like, shut up, Luke.
General Motors Holland. It's in there.
Yeah.
In Holland.
Yeah.
Good on you, mate. Well done. That is a brilliant achievement.
And actually, now I'm thinking, see this picture behind me on the wall?
Yeah.
Just this morning, this just won the abstract category in the biggest aerial contest in the world, the Sienna Drone Awards.
You just shut
up.
Yeah.
Information I found out by accident. My email account's crashed and I can't get into it, so I didn't know. And some Swedish guy sort of sent me an Instagram message that I've never heard of, saying, "Oh, congratulations!" And I was like, "What's he talking about?" And I sort of had to write him back and try and figure it out. And I went, "Holy smokes!" So I've had a good week.
Yeah, mate. Well done.
Except for the
job.
ankle part, that's sort of.
Yeah, I'm hobbling around like a grandma's kitchen on one leg at the moment still, but
Have you worked out what it is, or is it just it's
it's getting bad. It's just a bad sprain. I think
Yeah.
it's definitely. I unfolded the bandage this morning, and it's not looking too pretty.
Oh geez.
But
Right.
it's feeling all right. Slowly getting back there. Anyway, I just wanted to share that. Why not celebrate?
Well done, mate. Very
Thanks,
good.
everyone.
Let's talk about next week. So
Yeah,
we've got an exciting guest next week. Certainly very exciting for us Tasmanians that know of his work so well. I'm sure many of you would be aware of him. But we've got Grant Dixon coming on, who he's probably the most adventurous landscape photographer we've got here in Tasmania, and definitely one of the best. He ventures far into the mountains in the depths of winter to capture some pretty stunning imagery of our amazing places here in Tasmania, but not just here in Tasmania, all around the world. He's a genuine mountaineer, has travelled to many, many places, and we are very, very excited to have him on the show next week. And one of the things that he'll be talking about is his brand new book, which is coming out, called Winter Light, which will be coming out in November, and it's available for pre-order now. And yeah, so he'll be showing us some images from the book and from other travels in Tasmania and perhaps elsewhere as well. An absolute legend. Dare I call him a grandfather of Tasmanian landscape photography? Probably wouldn't like that, but
Maybe leave that one off next week.
that man has probably walked more of this landscape than anybody alive or in history ever can or will.
I think if you visit his website too, you'll be humbled very quickly in terms of the length and breadth he's gone to be able to get some of these images and the amazing conditions that he's photographed in. So definitely a very inspiring individual and very adventurous individual. So and creating extremely unique imagery. So
to give you the sense of level of his ability, I think he's one of the few people in the world that has either skied or crossed the full length of the Himalayas on 7 different trips. So we're not talking like he's pretty good. He's world class, and he's very, very refined at the kind of systems he uses for lightweight, and he's very, very good at shooting on the fly. And he has a body of work that he's creating a book out of that's like nothing else on the planet in terms of Tasmanian winter conditions in particular. And what's amazing about it is because of the way the planet and the climate's changing, we're probably going to never see anything like it again. So the kind of imagery that he has is pretty much, sadly, but one-off. And we'll be talking and delving into his process around the book later in the show as well. It's called Winter Light. I think I'm just about to pre-order one tonight, actually.
Yeah, definitely.
I've already got mine pre-ordered.
Yeah,
I'll be pre-ordering another one very soon. So
hey.
I can't have one on the bookshelf. I have to have 2.
Oh, one day, if you're lucky enough to see Nick Monk's book collection, you'll be a lucky person.
I'm sure there are people with better ones, but I like it. Anyway, time to sign off, Lukey.
Yeah, I think so. Look, thanks so much everyone for joining us and in letting us indulge in our adventures. I think just to sum up, amazing location to visit if you get a chance, and Paul and I will gladly show you around. So get in touch if you are keen. We'll also be on at the same time next week with Grant Dixon. We've got new graphics now too, so the thumbnails are going to look a little bit different from now on, thanks to our good friend Dex. That are a bit more eye-catching. So we're stoked about those, and looking forward to choosing an image actually for Grant's thumbnail too. Yeah. So we'll sign it off there. Thanks so much again, everyone, for coming back, and see you next week. Bye, everyone.
Have a good week, everyone.
See you.
Thank you.